Someone who I respect very much once said, "Why are you willing to put your neck on the line to say things that might get you in trouble?"
Is it better as a salesperson to have high emotional intelligence because you can read the person, or low because then you're more likely to go in for the kill? Or maybe you can learn both. Maybe there's a balance.
Dr. Chris Spearman, from a difficult childhood to gaining a PhD in cancer research at the same time as building a multi-seven-figure fitness business in his early 20s. Chris has built sales teams for Tai Lopez and the Wolf of Wall Street, and his team now advise some of the biggest entrepreneurs in the world.
You know Jordan Belfort, Wolf of Wall Street, and you've led his sales team. How did you get into that situation?
Again, like the PhD, it's about getting in the room. I'm going to teach you how to do the same with all of your prospects. I'm about to show you an irresistible offer that you can't say no to.
Would you rather hire a killer salesperson who's got all this confidence and will do a great job, got an above average close rate, or would you take someone who's...
Second one, hands down, no question.
What's your relationship like with money now?
For me, money was a tool to buy freedom.
All your quotes, podcasts, scripts, everything was deleted. So you only had 60 seconds to give a bit of advice to someone that you think would be really powerful to them in this day and age. What would you say?
How much time do I have to think about it?
I've got a quick favour to ask you. Nearly 90% of people listening to this podcast right now don't follow or subscribe to us. And my goal is to get that down to 80%. So if you've ever liked an episode or a clip that we've put out, please could you click that follow or subscribe button. It helps us more than you know to bring more guests onto the podcast and put out better and better content for you. Thank you. Before we dive into this episode, I want to take a second to speak about our sponsor, Pith and Stem, who we are thrilled to have on this journey with us. As someone who is always looking for ways to improve my healthy hustle, Pith and Stem's drop-top desk stood out to me as the best full work-from-home solution on the market. The world of work from home is changing, and a laptop or screen perched on your lap or dining room table isn't enough anymore. It's imperative that we have a solution at home that matches our productivity station that we can have in our office. But of course, homes weren't made to be worked in, and not all of us want a dedicated study. That's why I'm so happy that Pith and Stem created this perfect solution. They designed this desk with both the needs of the professional and their home in mind. It's perfect because it allows me to have a full productivity station that suits my needs and helps me get the most out of every minute that I spend at it, not only so I work comfortably, but that I actually enjoy it. And the best thing about DropTop, I can close and lock it at the end of the day to keep work and home separate. And it looks awesome on the wall. You can get your DropTop desk anywhere in the world from pithandstem.com, or just Google DropTop and you'll find it pretty quickly. So Chris, what would you say that happened to you in the past has defined who you've become today?
I would say, lots of things. I guess you've kind of heard my childhood story, I guess, but that's definitely been a powerful one, I would say. Just to give context, I grew up to be fair, like a lot of people do, we all grow up in challenging situations at times. And sometimes the most beautiful upbringing is a challenge because it doesn't prepare us for challenge. So I think it depends on how I would say your story isn't as important as the meaning that you put behind your story. Because let's say my story, for example, my parents separated. My mum ended up disabled with myself and 3 other brothers in a relationship with a chronic alcoholic who was exceptionally abusive for a decade, and most of my childhood was domestic violence. That could have easily been the reason why I became an alcoholic, or it could have been the reason why I didn't drink until I was in my mid-20s. So I think the stories that we have are valuable, but the meaning we attribute to those stories are more valuable. So I would say that journey, in my mind, prepared me for financial freedom. I wanted to look after my mum. So I was 9 years older than my next brother. My mum at this point was, virtually disabled or on the verge of being disabled because of the abuse that she had suffered from this guy. And I had to attribute meaning to that. And when I look back, I would say it was my gift. I would never want my mum to go through what she did, but for me, it was a gift because I had no other option other than to be financially free. And I think when you're that age or when you're a teenager, you can get pulled into other things. But me knowing that my mum's future was resting on my shoulders was for me valuable. So that definitely put some context. In my mind, I thought I'm either going to play professional rugby and make loads of money, or I'm going to be a doctor and make loads of money. And as I said, I got my scholarship to university was a rugby scholarship, and then academic scholarship after that. And so I was kind of balancing both for a while until I doubled down. But yeah, I think some people, when I speak to them, they find it hard to hear that was my gift, because they don't understand, I guess. And there's not much I could have done to change my upbringing, but the story that I attribute to it is one that I have control over. I think I'll butcher this quote, but it's a quote that I love. It's from, have you read Man's Search for Meaning? Dr. Viktor Frankl. It's an incredible book, but he basically talks about he was in a concentration camp. He was in Auschwitz during the Second World War. And he said he identified that there were two types of people in the concentration camp. There were people who became a victim and, oh my God, I can't do anything, I'm stuck here. Or there's the people who were like, well, I'm stuck here and I can't really do much else, so let me make the most of it. And the crazy part about that is I saw a lot of that in my PhD when I was looking at cancer patients. People who emotionally gave up, and other people who continued to fight. After my mum had suffered this abuse, she ended up being diagnosed with breast cancer, hence why I took that turn. But I thought that was important. The quote was, between every stimulus and a response, there is a space. And within that space is your opportunity to choose your response. And therein lies your growth and your freedom. In other words, that between everything that happens you and the decision that you make to respond, you have an opportunity every single day to decide how you respond to that thing, or how you use the stimulus to good or bad. So yeah, I would say it was a very challenging one, but I wouldn't change it for sure.
It's a lot of pressure on a young person.
I think so.
I wonder what your opinion is on comfortability, because the gift there was that you went through hardship.
Yeah.
And a lot of people might get into their 20s, 30s, and they've never gone through hardship. They've never taken a risk, and then they look back and go, "Oh, he was given opportunities," but it was actually just comfortability. You weren't given comfortability.
Yeah, I think it's. I've seen people who have had a very comfortable life, and I often wonder, have they been given a disservice? Now, that would be my story, of course. I would say that. That doesn't mean that what I experienced doesn't come with a downside. Maybe emotional hardness in my personal life, I would say, for obvious reasons. But also, yeah, it comes with challenges, I guess. And then the question is, one day I'm sure I hope I'll have kids, and what do I do there? I'm not going to kick them around the house, but like, am I going to give them security and give them everything, or am I going to go, okay, you kind of need to figure this out by yourself too? That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that.
Exactly. How do you teach them? How do you give them everything that you've had, but in a slightly better way?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question.
No, yeah, that's a difficult one. Okay, so I want to just jump through this slightly. So you went to university, you played rugby at a good level.
Yeah.
What position?
Mainly wing. So
okay, quick.
Played semi-pro for a while. Yeah. Okay. I did quite a lot of athletics in Ireland. It's Ireland. It's not like Jamaica, but I got to a national final. Yeah.
Very good rugby nation as well. And if you're listening and you don't know what rugby is, it's like American football but harder. So we've got the rugby university. So in university you studied science.
I studied biochemistry essentially. Yeah.
Biochemistry. Yeah. Okay, on a scholarship.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So when you're going through these sort of things, you're balancing a lot. You're showing a lot of resilience to try and support the mission that is helping your family, right?
Yeah. Financial freedom.
Financial freedom. Okay.
Yeah.
So where did fitness come into this? Were you still training? Obviously, you're playing rugby. How big a part of your life was that?
So I would say from 12, 13, 14, 15, I didn't my like most children. My goal was to be a professional athlete, and I thought that was the most likely way to make money at the time. So I was getting up maybe at 6, half 6, 7 in the morning, training, working out, doing push-ups. Then I would shower, 40-minute walk to the bus. Because of I got essentially a scholarship to high school. Also, when I was 11 or 12, I did an entrance exam, and so I got my bus paid for. Like, we didn't have to pay for anything. My mum was on disability allowance at the time with herself, obviously, and 4 of us. So I was just trying to make the most of what was there, and I was like, oh, okay, professional football player, rugby player, we'll see. So I would say my interest in fitness started then, I would say, and I was still quite small, was always quite small, and I was generally the smallest person on the pitch. Also because I was playing men's rugby at a young age, at a pretty high level, a national level. I was keen into the gym to try and build some muscle, and I was quite explosive as well. So that's, I would say, where that came from, I would say. I think also because my father's in my life now, but wasn't for most of my childhood as much as I would have liked because of the separation and lots of other things that went on. And this guy who was aggressive and wasn't a great masculine guide in my life, I would say for a lot of young men especially, turning to a place or a thing that is a more masculine, male like weightlifting or lifting weights or the gym was a kind of like a solace maybe. And I guess I felt like because I didn't have the masculine guidance in my life that I would like, I was searching for that within myself. And to me, although I'm not saying it's the case, we think like, stronger, whether that's emotionally or physically. So then gym became a cornerstone of my life, I guess, for that reason, from an emotional strength reason too. I was always too young to stop any aggression that was in the house that was there. And I guess a part of me thought that if I was stronger, I could have done something. Yeah. Looking back on it now, that's not how I would have handled that situation, I think.
Yeah, of course.
It's very easy to say. People go, oh, if you saw him now, what would you do? And the answer is I would give him a hug. As crazy as that sounds, he went through a lot of stuff in his childhood, not for another time. But and he turned to alcohol for that reason. So yeah.
I mean, I think that part is really interesting. I think that's very, very powerful thing to say, because everyone's going through life for the first time, aren't they? So
right.
So he's had difficulty, and then he caused difficulty for you. Thinking about your story then as well, part of me just thinks like I've had things in my past. A lot of us have had difficult childhoods, and fundamentally, it gets to a point where no one cares.
Really?
Like you can tell your story, but they're like, okay, did you win? Did you succeed?
What happens because of it?
Exactly. That's the frame that you've put on it, which I really like.
Yeah.
This is going to sound pathetic.
It's fine.
I played rugby up until about my second year of uni. Only for uni, not the level you did.
What position?
12.
Nice. Yeah.
And I couldn't keep going. I got injured, but also just trying to balance uni, a job, and rugby at the same time. Perhaps I didn't have that drive because I wasn't at the level you were, but I'm interested in how you balanced, and I'm going to add all these things in here, right?
That's good, yeah.
You've balanced your rugby, your university, I'm talking about the master's level now, so we've gone up a level, but also you've started to grow a fitness business, and you're starting to get onto covers of magazines in London, and you're getting some real attention for being this, this academic, sporty guy growing a business at this time in like the 2000s, right?
Yeah. So to answer the question, I would say is I became completely and utterly obsessed with the concept of time when I was a very young child, and to the point where, without going dark, I to this day, I was asked actually by my team yesterday, they said, honest question on a team huddle, someone said, how often do you think about death? And I said multiple times every single day. And not that to me isn't a morbid statement. It's a preparing for the people that are in my life for this life is valuable, like this life is precious, like what could, also because my PhD was in cancer research, I saw a lot of people who are perfectly healthy leave the earth within 4 or 5 weeks. So, but from a very young age, I was very, very focused on making the time that I have as efficient as possible. And I think, I don't know why this was the case, but I believe almost with most things, with the exception of running 100 meters, because I think there's some genetic capabilities that are necessary for that. Most things, given enough time, you can become close to exceptional. So I realized as a young child that the more time I had, the higher probability I would have to achieve the things I need to do to get freedom. To the point where I didn't go on a family holiday from 12 to 18. Not that we had many holidays, although this guy, as crazy as it sounds, when he was sober, he was a nice guy and used to take us places, but that's kind of when the carnage happened. But I was very focused on, like, I need to maximize my time. So I'd been doing that from a very young age. I would say from 11, 12, 13, 14, I had an A4 bit of paper sideways with my daily, like, really,
wow.
yeah,
Habits.
like from like a calendar, like Google Calendar, but on an A4 thing, ruled and everything. Like, so I would go, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this amount of study. I got close to perfect grades in school. So it was all, it was all efficiency, not me being smart. Honestly, I would say I've got a high level of intelligence, but if I was to attribute most of the success, whatever you want to deem as success, it would be to just being really efficient, which is what I bring into sales teams. We can touch on later. Is efficiency, in my opinion, beats volume in lots of ways. So I just tried to be super, super efficient with everything.
So I really like that, because people are not going to want to hear that. They're going to want to hear. They're going to want to hear, I hustled harder, I did this and that, and I just didn't sleep. But actually, you did work hard, of course, but you had systems. And so, talk to me about how you got those first clients when you're commuting to and from, university and rugby and sports, all sorts of stuff. How are you getting clients for this business?
Yeah, so when I moved to London to do my PhD, so masters in breast cancer, because my mum was diagnosed soon after she left this guy. That was in Ireland, and then I moved to London to do my PhD. Mentioned the story, and then joined the local gym because I didn't have any friends, and it was a pretty aggressive environment, which was just fine. It was absolutely fine. And I was doing quite a lot of commuting, maybe 3 to 4.5 hours a day between where I lived, going to the clinic to get blood samples, bringing the blood samples to another part of Surrey to be analysed, to then going back to the university, to then going home.
So involved.
To then, yeah. So essentially, I would need to go to the clinic, wait around for most of the day to get the blood samples. I would then need to take it from, let's say, South London to Guildford in Surrey to analyse the blood samples and store the samples. And then I would need to come back up to South London, and then, in the evening, and then I would drop my stuff off, go to the gym, come back. So that maybe 4-hour a day commute became a blessing, because I didn't have many friends in London at the time, and the only way I could keep in touch with people was social media. So I started posting like my just going to the gym, like just topless photos. Everyone thought I was just like weird. And then also my lab stuff, my PhD stuff. And I would say, first of all, it was a lot easier back then because most people were consuming content, not creating content. This is 2012, 2013, 2014. And I guess people resonated with the fact that I was in decent shape at the time, and I was, doing something that worthwhile, I guess. And I would say the following grew. And then after a while, I ended up doing some photo shoots for some magazines, some supplement companies, got sponsored by a few companies. And then a guy reached out to me and said, listen, I've been following your stuff for a long time. My wife left me. She ran off with someone else. Like, I'm suicidal. I'm in a really bad place. Please help me. Like, please, you can clearly get in shape. Please help. Mm-hmm. And I said no to him for about a week. And eventually it was St. Stephen's Day or Boxing Day, maybe 2014. And I eventually was like, okay, like, send me £40. Here are my bank details. I'll sort you out. And it went from there, really. Yeah.
That's how this business started.
Really?
So then you realized it was just a case of asking or talking to more people. And that's when the commute was able to be used for business growth.
Well, prior to that, I was trying to grow my social for like ego metrics. And I realized very quickly during that period of time, well, bear in mind at this point, I had a scholarship to my PhD, but my goal was financial freedom. So then when I realized that I could fund my living expenses and save or send money back to my mum, I was like, hold on here. So then I started with no business experience. That's not true. I like sold eggs when I was a kid, and I sold trees when I was a kid, and like the random stories.
Pro.
Yeah. So so we had like 40 hens growing up, and my mum used to make like creme brulee most days because she'd use the eggs for whatever she could because we were low on money anyway. But we had hens, so I thought it'd be a good idea to sell to a local hotel, and
Perfect.
so I guess there was always an entrepreneur within me somewhere. And it just kind of went from there. So then I started using, just messaging, replying, call to actions. The biggest shift really was doing shout outs before anyone else started doing them. This is 2014. So I would go to people who had amassed a big following, and I would ask them how much they would charge me to post me on their page.
Oh, cool.
And they were like, what do you mean? Like, give me money? And I'm like, yep. And like they had maybe like one in particular had nearly 1 million followers at the time. And I remember him saying some crazy low number, and I'm like, okay. So I PayPal'd him some money, and then I got like 1,000 followers. And out of those 1,000, because it was a fitness page, out of those 1,000 followers, I maybe got 100 clients.
Oh, wow.
And made like at that time a lot of money, maybe like multiple 5 figures. I'm like, whoa. So then I just kept
before anyone else was doing it.
There was 1 or 2 people I knew who were growing really big followings back then, and they were doing it also. But this is like a decade before anyone started really taking. This is way before like Facebook ads. This was just giving someone money to post your stuff.
Partnership, kind of went from there. Partnership and leverage.
Essentially. It's
like podcasts before podcasts were a thing, really.
Yeah. It got to the point where someone would post your photo on their page, and you would pay them like $500 at the time, which was a lot. And
I just want to briefly interrupt this podcast so I can talk to you about Nutrition Kitchen, who have kindly sponsored this episode. As entrepreneurs who are looking to stay as healthy as possible, fueling ourselves with high quality food without breaking the bank or wasting time can be tough day to day. Nutrition Kitchen solves that issue by delivering incredible meals to your door, tailored to your diet, whether you're trying to lose weight, build muscle, or maintain balance. They change their menus all the time so you can choose from a variety of dishes and leave the monotony of meal prepping behind. Now, back to our guest.
Would drop it after an hour.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So it's like, but you were hoping then that you would get some good traction. So that's kind of where it started, I guess.
I really like this stuff because I think there's always a way or a epiphany moment where someone starts to understand, if I do more of this, like more better, like what Moses says, more better, I'll start to make some more money here. And obviously what's cool is that you had this mission behind why you're doing it. And I can see why that would resonate. You've got the science side and the PhD, but you're also doing it for your family. And also you like to help people, right, with the fitness side of things. People genuinely struggle.
I think that became very apparent during my PhD more so because I realized, and I would say this is a mistake, that it's wrong for me to say it's a mistake. My opinion is that it was my mistake to look for external gratification on the cover of magazines, billboards, side of London buses, like all of this stuff that was amazing was just filling an insecurity from childhood. And it was fleeting. And it wasn't until I realized the impact that I was able to have on humans that actually changed me. Like it made me feel, again, because of loads of different reasons, I was searching for something that I didn't have in my childhood. And I thought being on the cover of a magazine would get that, and it didn't. What was far more meaningful longer term was knowing that you impacted another human life. And that's, I would say, one of the main angles that I try to discuss with salespeople now. It's that provided that you are willing to learn, you'll make loads of money. But you can decide to make the irony is when you focus on that meaning and purpose and truth, you make way more money.
Oh, absolutely, because people resonate with you so much harder.
Right, and I think a lot of people are just like trying to sell stuff, and they won't sell as much stuff because their conviction isn't there. And even when they have the money, it's not the same. It's not the same.
It strikes me that you like a challenge. Like
Yeah,
everything we've taken about here is harder than most people would have done. You've put the effort in and you've done it in a way that is, I think, more congruent with your values and your mission than most people, like you just touched on there. And then, so it's ironic that we're going to talk about sales, because that's one of the things that most people in business find that like it's the hardest thing. It's the firing line, right? Mm-hmm. So it may sound stupid, but at what point did you click that the sales and the fitness business that you were growing was mainly about the sales side? It wasn't necessarily around the content. It wasn't necessarily around the results. It was like that conversation, going in there, being able to provide value, not necessarily just trying to close people. When did that start to drop for you and then obviously take you down the sales route?
So I think I had that always. And I think the reason that was the case is that I was able from a very young age to read people very well. Like this guy would come home drunk and I'm 6, 7, 8, and I'm here trying to diffuse what could be like, oh, he was a Wimbledon fan. Oh, Wimbledon won today. Did you see? And like trying to not manipulate, but trying to persuade distraction or handle human emotion. And I realized later on that was also a gift in that way. And I would say, so I was able to do that quite well, and I would say it could be a natural gift. It could also be that it was compounded by that. It could also be that I've done a lot of reps. It was when I hired someone else who wanted financial freedom too. He was my first employee. He was a coach in the fitness business, and eventually he wanted to do sales. And I knew that if he wanted to make proper money, he would have to learn to sell. And that was a very painful experience. I love the guy now, but it was a very painful experience. The reason it was painful is because I was teaching someone something that I never taught before, that I was naturally pretty good at, who was very poor at sales originally, and I could never fire him because of who he was. So I was forced to get it right. So it took me about 3 years, 2 to 3 years, to get him to a point where I would say he's very good at sales. That was another gift. Because of who he was, I could not fire him, really. Like, I passed him off the business. That's how much I couldn't fire him, because I knew that I would be okay by myself doing anything. That's just my mentality. But for him, I was like, I need to help this guy get real good, because obviously if he makes money, the business makes money. But I never even thought of hiring someone else because of how it would make him feel. And also I like the challenge, as you said. So that learning experience set up the rest of my life, really. Because in my mind, looking back on it now, if I can teach him how to close high ticket, like I can teach anyone how to close high ticket, really. Like, he's good now. Yeah. He's making a lot of money in that business now.
And I guess teaching is the best way to learn, isn't it?
Of course. And also, like, yeah, and then other people started to come into the frame, and then I'm kind of managing other people. And how you manage a prospect on a call is quite similar to how you manage an employee, teaching them how to sell, or a closer, or someone in sales, I think, because you're digging deep into their drivers, and you're pushing on the things that are going to get a response, not in a manipulative way, but like trying to initiate change or a perspective, and everyone's different. Everyone has different drivers and different emotions and needs to be handled differently. Like every prospect, every employee is the same.
So that's interesting. Is it better as a salesperson to have high emotional intelligence because you can read the person, or low because then you're more likely to go in for the kill? Or maybe you can learn both. Maybe there's a balance.
Can't think of many situations where a low EQ is a good thing. That's just my opinion. Because having a high level of emotional intelligence doesn't mean that you need to be emotional. Mm-hmm. You can have the intelligence to know what's happening and act accordingly. So I think if you have a high level of EQ, you can best figure out how to handle this individual. And sometimes that's going in for the kill. But if you don't have a good EQ and you are very direct all the time with the wrong people, you're not going to do great. Your ego might protect itself because you'll project it's their fault. You'll bully them into not closing, and you'll feel that, oh, it was their fault.
I guess your point is perfectly outlined by, before this conversation, I mean, the cameras were rolling, we've probably got the clips, but you were talking about if someone's going to sell a 50 or £100 fitness package to someone who's struggling to run a 5K, you have to handle them so differently, even if it's the same 45-minute sales call, as someone who makes 50 million a year and is buying something for £5 million.
Absolutely. And like, we've seen that even now in like what we're doing, helping other people to sell high ticket on LinkedIn. We've got a branch of our business that is fitness coaches and a branch of our business that are health online coaches. So like, for example, just to give an example, the average fitness coach is a personal trainer or someone who has just gotten off the gym floor, who, generally speaking, may not have gone to, further education, and they have probably been the sporty person in school, not always, but generally. On the flip side, you have a health entrepreneur or a health coach who maybe is a dietitian or a chiropractor or a physio or a potential doctor who wants to create an online offer so they can move away from the clinic. Very different psyche. This person is in a lot of pain that a lot of uneducated people are making loads of money and they're not. Ego. And this person feels like these people are making loads of money and they don't look like me. So it's handling their persona. One of my strongest bits of advice for anyone who wants to sell, or if you have a sales team, for me, there's 3 layers of competence. There is your ability to sell in general. What's more important than that, in my opinion, is your understanding of the product or service you're selling. What's more important than that for me is understanding the human psychology of the average prospect. Because if Louise wants to lose 40 pounds for her wedding in 4 months, that communication is very different to someone who wants to go from 10K to 20K online from being a personal trainer. It's a completely different psychological change. Now, there are differences between people always, but generally between demographics of people, you can get a better understanding, I would say, and different triggers will address the elephant in the room.
There's so much psychology that goes into it.
It's all human psychology, really. Yeah.
I want to set the scene a little bit here, because some of the things that we've gone over are very like, I was on a few magazines. Yeah, they were like top magazines. But also, we're going to talk about sales, but we're not just talking about, lots of people have sold fitness stuff online, but Jordan Belfort, Wolf of Wall Street, and you've led his sales team. So if you've seen the film, the guy played by Leonardo DiCaprio, for a start, how did you get into that situation? And then I want to touch on how we build sales teams and go from there. But I also want to make sure people understand the level of sales we're talking about here.
Yeah, so I think, again, like the PhD, it's about getting in the room. And I would say so from teaching this guy to sell, to going through to then creating another business that teaches other people how to sell high ticket, and being connected with a lot of people in the fitness space. And I think the fitness space is a very core area of sales. Like, that's where Alex Hormozi came from. It's where a lot of people originate from generally. So I think it's a good level of understanding. And some people have asked me why. My opinion is that there is a high level of emotional responsibility in a fitness sale. And I think when you're dealing, or you're able to deal with more of an emotional sale, and you can get better at that, I think the logical sale becomes easier. Generally speaking, a lot of people say you sell with emotion, you justify with logic. I would nuance that a little. We can come back to that later on. But generally speaking, I see value in that. So I then was introduced to a lot of other people running other sales teams. I then became sales director of Rudy's sales team. Rudy had a lot of joint ventures. Floyd Mayweather was one, Mike Tyson was one, Sylvester Stallone was one, Jordan Belfort was one. Then there was various different ones after that. So I was his sales director at the time. hiring, recruiting, training a lot of the people in not only his company, but the joint ventures too. And some of those I chose not to be as involved in because for various different reasons. When the Jordan Belfort one came up, it was like, so I get to train salespeople. The biggest issue in sales is that the biggest issue in selling to salespeople is they understand what you're doing. So let's say Jordan's, for example, he's got a straight line selling course, and then there was various different things after that. So you're selling to people who are already salespeople. And for some people, that's very challenging because they're like, oh my God, they know what you're doing. And I'm like, exactly. Like, to me, it was just easier because I'm able to have the conversation that most people won't, because I've been through things that most people haven't. So a difficult conversation is nothing to me because I've seen much worse. And I take that, maybe that's a badge of honor, or maybe it's a story I tell myself, but it works. So I go, and it's also someone who I respect very much once said, someone asked this person, they said, why are you willing to put your neck on the line to say things that might get you in trouble just because you believe them to be true? You must be very brave. And he said, I'm not brave at all. I'm just afraid of different things than you. And what he's afraid of is sweeping things under the rug that compound later on and become more challenging if not addressed. And I think that's a very strong point. So if there's an issue or a conversation in my life or in business, I always think it is generally better served to communicate and get it all out in the open so that things don't compound and don't build up over time. And when you're selling salespeople, a lot of people are like, oh my God, like they know the framework I'm going through. Whereas I'm like, hey, you know the framework I'm going through, right? Like, you want to be good at sales. Okay, so see the way I went through this with you right now, right? I'm going to teach you how to do the same with all of your prospects. I'm about to show you an irresistible offer that you can't say no to. And I want to teach you how to do this also. See the way that we're having a conversation, right? Have you felt that I've tried to sell you anything? And they're like, no. It's like, exactly. But I'm going to show you an offer that I don't think you can say no to. So you're going to have to come up with some form of objection that I can't handle because I know you need this thing. Does that make sense? And all of a sudden they're like you've put a complete, like you're just being so transparently poignant. Now, not everyone can do that because you need to have the competence or the ability to handle a difficult person. But I think it's easier to do that. Like, it's easier to put it this way. I think it is easier to become better than hope for a perfect situation. Like, I would prefer prepare and become better to handle most situations than not do the work as required and hope that it's going to be a good prospect or hope that this person doesn't have an objection. It's just easier to keep it within my control. It comes back to my childhood. I wasn't in control.
Yeah.
So how can you be in control as much as possible? Do the work. How can you, if everything's a probability game, and that's where my PhD came in. That's all math, statistics, probability. I don't believe in luck. I believe that luck is a phrase that we attribute to a positive outcome of probability. That's just an opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you break that down. So if I want to be in a situation like trying to close someone, it is more likely that I will close if I'm better. So let's just focus on getting better. Like, it's easier to just focus. You won't always close and as we said before, the goal isn't always to close. The goal is to get to the truth.
Yeah.
And hopefully that's...
And I also guess that, you hear this where closers or salespeople, they want to find the best offer because it's the easiest thing to sell, right? Which kind of makes sense as well. Yeah,
I think the best offer is, I see that perspective. So that's very similar to what we just spoke about. If I'm the best salesperson that you know, doesn't matter what offer I'm in. Or if it is, I can choose whichever offer I like because I'm good enough.
Yeah.
So like if I was Ronaldo, I can walk into most teams instead of being, a championship level player, which is still good, and trying to get into some big teams and bouncing around, and it's easier just to get better. I know that's hard for people to hear, but it's easier to get better, to focus on the things you need to focus on, so that there's very few stones left unturned. Then you can breeze into most offers. And that's very similar to what I did with a lot of these teams. I came in being me, genuinely authentic, and said, this is what I can bring to the table, let me show you. I think a lot of people as well, when they're going from offer to offer, they're like, this kind of frustrates me a little, I'll be honest, it's good. When someone, because most of what I do now is recruiting for my team. I ask them, the interview that I do with them is very unique. So I get on a call with them and I go, so what questions do you have for me? And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah. I tell a story. So my granddad, my mum's dad, did a PhD in Cambridge in theoretical physics. Really smart guy. Yeah. And he once said, intelligence is knowing answers and genius is asking the right questions. And that's so applicable to sales. So my interview with someone is them asking me questions, because I can tell who they are more by the questions they ask than the answers they give. So someone will give me questions and I will be judging them based on the quality of the questions they ask already. It's already started and they think they're quizzing me and I'm observing the questions they ask. And once they ask me all the questions, I give them the answers. I explain what had just happened and they're like, And I'm like, with that in mind, have you any good questions to ask me now? Not being harsh, but like most of the questions is like, how much money can I expect to earn? I have no idea how good you are. Like, how long's a piece of string? Like, oh, what does your best performing rep make right now? Like, I would never measure myself off someone else. Right. For me, I would. So I think an example is I think the world would be a better place if people were in sales in all areas were like, questions I would ask. How good can you help me become? Yeah. Because I would go, incredible. And then if that's the answer, then they'll make enough money in sales. I think too many people are not willing to go through the sacrifice and the reps that are required. And it's like when Alex Hormozy was asked that question, he said, figure out what you want, don't give a shit what other people think, and do enough volume that it would be unreasonable that you would achieve your goal. Yeah. I think there's a lot of value to that too.
I completely agree. Yeah, I mean, I've got a million questions based on what you just said, but I'm going to... So this week I was speaking to a guy that does 8 figures a year. We're just speaking about business in general, like overall, top down looking at business. And he said he thinks you've got a real business when you have a sales team doing the sales for you. So lots of people just struggle with sales. They don't get enough leads or that's their excuse. They can't close, but it's just them doing 1 or 2 sales calls a week, maybe. The next step up from that is you're really busy. You've got loads of sales calls. Everything's being handled for you, but you're doing all the sales. The next step up from that is maybe you've got some people helping you, but you're still doing the sales. He was like, he thinks you've got a proper business when you've got people handling all your sales for you. You're still the sales manager, you're still involved, you haven't got to be out of the business, but that's when you've got a real business, you've got a machine running for you. Where do you think, based on all the people that you've worked with and the things you've done, where do you think people struggle most when they're scaling a sales team?
A few things. So firstly is I would have made way more money if I continued to take sales calls. So I've not taken a sales call in a very, very long time. And when I was teaching the closer in the fitness business to close, I purposely removed myself from sales so that I had to burn the boats and get them real good. And so I agree with what he's saying. But I do think that there is a misconception, and the misconception is I need to tick this box to justify going to this box. I need to, because it's not an ascension. What I mean by that is I don't think you need to learn to drive a Fiat Punto before you can learn to drive a Formula One car. It might help, but the argument is also if you put the same person in the Formula One car day one versus the other person in Fiat Punto for a year or two, I think this person will learn quicker than moving over. they're different things. So training, hiring, recruiting, and managing a sales team is, of course, your ability to learn sales is important. But I just got the realization in my mind that if this is freedom, and I agree with him, it is, the sooner I start learning this, the better. The reason most people won't is they care too much about money. Maybe care too much is strong. But if I wanted to make more money, I would have just continued to take all of the calls, but then I wouldn't have the freedom I have now, and the business wouldn't make money without me. So I had to make a trade-off. And my trade-off was easy because I grew up with very little. Like, any form of money was a success. Like, my life is already complete in lots of ways. So I was able to go, okay, well, so what are the things I need to get better at here? And I felt the more sales that I take, the more of a crutch I'm putting on the system that eventually is not going to need me or shouldn't need me. I do think there's an argument for keeping on the pulse too. But that depends on how much involvement that you want, I guess. My goal for the business now is not that we make more money. It's that I have more closers performing at a higher level. So I'm focusing on the things that are required to do those things. Hiring, recruiting, managing, personal development for those people. It's not easy. I'm not saying it is, but it's different.
Yeah, and presumably bringing in a sales team for these big people that you've done before, you're still bringing them in. There's still got to be a culture. Mm-hmm. There still has to be a set of scripts and SOPs. So I think it maybe, again, has been Alex Hormozi. I feel like we quote him quite often now, where he's like, if a closer or a setter they've got an above average close rate or set rate, but they don't follow the script, they'll be fired. He's like, they have to follow that script, because we're speaking about on the way here, actually. If you've got a closer or a setter and they're doing really well, but they're not using the script, so it's off their own back, well, if they leave, you've lost whatever goodness they had. Mm-hmm. But also, they're not helping the team.
Yep.
So what would your opinion be there on, like, how do you bring a team in? How do you keep growing a sales team without having these people that are sort of either too good, which sounds weird, or not good enough?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think culture is important. One of the things that I learned in other sales businesses was hiring and recruiting more than anything. Because some of those sales teams, everyone wants to work for said people. And then they realize that it's just it's another sales gig, just with a different name above the door. And the turnaround was quite quick. So I learned a lot of recruitment and training then that I was able to bring into my own business, which was useful. But the culture is important. And this isn't for everybody, but for me, I ask the question, would I go and get pissed in Vegas with this person? And if we all got hammered in Vegas, would we get on? Now, that's just me, because for me, they need to have the same values as me. They need to think, generally speaking, there's billions of people in the world. It's easier for me to bring people in, and answering this in multiple different ways, I guess. I'm not looking for people who are going to make me money. I'm looking for a family that I didn't really have as a kid. A virtual family of people who respect, look up, admire, and everything that we do. And I think if you do that, you're in a really good place, because most of the people, if you look at anyone that has been in my business sales team, it takes time to make money. And most of them are only there for two reasons until they make money. One, because they know that I can teach them to close better than most people, so they're willing to stay because that's invaluable for them in their future. And two, they have a level of respect for me and I do for them that prevents them from bouncing elsewhere until they get good. And then when they get good, it's game over, because there are people that will move on. But I would say, like, the majority of my team have stayed with me for a very long time, because then when they do start making money, which I know I can help them do, provided they're willing to do the work, they have the same values, they have the same respect, they have the same care, they enjoy the family element of what we do, and sometimes the hard truth that needs to be told, and they're making money. And then it becomes exponential after time.
And I really like the way that you run your team, because if you don't follow Chris on on Instagram, for example, you're out and about with them quite often.
Yeah,
You'll be having coffee or lunch, and they're as much a part of the business as you are. And so I guess you've answered this question, but I'll still ask, would you rather hire a killer salesperson who's got all this confidence and will do a great job, got an above average close rate, or would you take someone who's good but is really willing to learn?
Second one, hands down, no question.
Build the skill equity in that person.
Yeah, and also because I've seen this with throughout my coaching life, when you help someone transform, they're indebted to you forever. Mm. If I can help someone who's not good at sales get really, really good, there's a bond and a connection. I'm fortunate that I can teach sales. So if I had let's say, a knitting course, and I'm managing my sales team for a knitting course, my skill is knitting. It's not, I have the benefit that we sell high ticket. So my skill is high ticket. So hiring and training a sales team is what I'm born to do. It's my gift. And the reason I believe it's my zone of genius or my gift, along with analytics, numbers, and problem solving from what I've done before, is the two areas of my life. The looking at numbers and data from my PhD, and then emotional intelligence from my childhood. Whether I've ascribed those to those things or I've made them the reason, or they are legit reason, they have definitely made me who I am by having, I was going to say, just by having both of those two stories in my past. I guess it's given me a better dynamic for now, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the perfect combination of, or it's the perfect set of ingredients into the recipe that becomes,
I think so,
sales, isn't it? What's your relationship like with money now? Since growing up in that way, going through sales and doing millions and millions of dollars of sales yourself, and seeing other people do it, helping teams do more than that. How do you now cope with money? What's your relationship like?
Yeah, we spoke earlier about the £1,000 in a bank account situation. So there was a period of time where I wouldn't keep any more than £1,000 in a bank account because I didn't want to lose my hustle. But that's fine when I was closing. But as I started to build a team and a bigger team, it became more important for me to have more stress resilience, I think, especially if the team are not performing, I don't want to turn around and go, where the hell is the money? Because that's not my value. It is when I'm in the seat and I'm putting pressure on my performance. But with the rest of the team, it's different. So, but again, I would say for me, money was a tool to buy freedom so that my mum could be free from him, so that I could be free in my future. And one day, hopefully, I'll have children who will have freedom. So what I remind myself about daily, which is why I don't take sales calls anymore, is because I'm not saying I'm like a billionaire, but I have more money than I ever thought I would have growing up as a small kid in Ireland. What I don't want to do now is I don't want to remove my freedom to make more money that I don't need yet. And if I have kids and maybe daughters and they may be more expensive, things will change. But right now, I live a very comfortable life. I don't buy a lot of crazy things. I've got a nice car, but that was always a dream for me growing up. But other than that, I'm not I don't flash a lot of money around. I would say that I incentivize my team financially better than most sales teams I've been in. I've said this quite a lot recently. There's only two types of people that have been in a lot of sales teams: shit closers or someone who's consulted sales teams. And I'm in a very unique situation that I have gone into dozens of sales teams and go, oh, this is really clever. Obviously, I'm teaching, but I'm like, oh, this is really clever. Let me come here. I think I've counted, there's 4 people that you've had in this podcast whose sales teams I've actually managed. And some of you don't know. We'll leave it for another time. So at least 3, maybe 4. So, and every single one of them I've been able to get value from for myself. And as we've said before, when you teach something, you learn. So if someone asks me a question and I don't know the answer, and I think, and I go, I never thought of that, and I give them the answer, we build it into their team, then I go, oh, that worked really well, or it didn't. Or, okay, I'm not going to do this. So then I'm able to then go, oh, well, let me create the sales team that I want and avoid the mistakes that I've seen elsewhere or the things that we've tried elsewhere. So they're the two types of people, I guess, that, and obviously, so I would say a lot of what I do now with my team has been built on, I would say, the shoulders of that. I've seen things that work and things that don't work. And I think having a good vision of what you want your team to be like. I also think that if I was more money focused, I think my team would have a different view of what we're doing. When I have one-to-one calls with my team every week each, the sales team essentially, and the conversation is always like, how much commission do you want to make next month? How do we get there? Because if I can help them make double the commission, the business doubles. So I think it's a better perspective sometimes.
I completely agree. But you've got to have the wherewithal to be able to understand that. Most people just go, let's just push forward. Whereas
Emotional intelligence. Which ties into it again.
And this is why I think your persona, but your experience, your knowledge, what you do resonates with me a lot, because it's so different to how most people do it. And I think, people will hopefully go and follow you after this and you'll see what I mean. Like, your content, just resonates with me on a different level. And so I'll put this to you as sort of the parting question. If, you're going to laugh, if all your content, all your quotes, podcasts, scripts, everything was deleted, so you only had 60 seconds to give a bit of advice to someone that you think would be really powerful to them in this day and age, what would you say?
How much time do I have to think about it? A few minutes? Mm-hmm. Okay. I think regardless of what people believe, what faith, or whether they believe in the universe or God or which religion, I think that there are some things that I've read in different scriptures that for me resonate different. And that the truth sets you free is one that is very important to me. And I think that it's very easy to say that the truth will set you free, but most people don't know what their truth is. And we spoke about this earlier. Most people don't know who they are. Most people don't know what their values are. There's so much going on in today, media, influencers, that most of what people say are buzzwords, and they don't ask difficult questions of themselves. So my advice would be, whatever time it takes to figure out what life you really want, who you really are, what are your values, what are your non-negotiables, and just to work really hard at staying within, let's say, those boundaries. I think most things are achievable. But I don't know, we all make mistakes, but I don't know if it's worth bending your values or your truth to achieve things outside of that, because then they're not really yours. So if I was to summarize it, I would say to identify the things you're willing to do and you're not willing to do. And the only reason we can't find the boundaries until we go outside them sometimes. And I'm definitely no saint. So, but when you do things or you find yourself in very difficult situations in life, be it self-inflicted or things that happen in your childhood, you really start to realize that what your values are and what's important to you and what you're not willing to waver from. And it's different if you're female and male, for sure. And I've only been a man, so in this life. So if I was speaking to my younger self, I would say, try to figure out what the best person, son, father, and husband that Chris can be is. What are his values? And try and do the best that you can to protect the people in your life without going outside those, I would say.
I love that values has become and philosophies almost has become the theme of the conversation. I think it's really, really powerful. Chris, thank you so much for your time. It's awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy.
If you like these episodes, feel free to subscribe to our Healthy Hustle newsletter below, where you'll get behind the scenes information from our guests, as well as from the studio operator who helps us create these cinematic episodes. It's also full of business advice and tips, and it will help you join the community of healthy entrepreneurs.